Hi everyone, it's Professor Cushing. I'd just like to go over two documents with you this week, in addition to talking about your self-introduction. One is the Greensheet, and the second is the online course discussion grading rubric. So if you don't already have printouts of those, if you wouldn't mind making a printout, pausing the video, and then rejoining me once you have the documents, that would be great. Okay, so let's first go over this first document, which is the Greensheet. Please note that I am living overseas in Italy this summer, but I am available on email and also on Skype. So if you could please send me a contact request. My Skype ID is Catherine.Cushing1. That will be a really great way for us to communicate with one another. I also have left my home telephone number with you, which you can call, but please note that we have a 9-hour difference between Italy and California, so I'm actually 9 hours ahead of you, so please keep that time difference in mind. As far as email communication goes, I encourage you to email me with any questions you might have about the course or assignments that we have. Please use the email box within the Desire to Learn class website. Okay, so that email address is catherine.cushing@sjsudesiretololearn.com. Okay, that's different than my official SJSU email address. If you use this particular course email address, you'll get a faster response, and then I'll also be able to keep track of correspondence by class. All right, another thing to remember about this class is that we're teaching it asynchronously, which means that as long as you do the readings and complete the assignments on time, you can do them when it's most convenient for you to complete them, okay, as long as you finish them by the due date. So for every assignment, I'll let you know when the last date and time is to submit that assignment. So just make sure that you submit your assignments on time, and you'll be able to work at your own pace, which is a really great aspect of online classes. Also, just want to make sure everybody's in the right class. This is Environmental Studies 152, Environmental Issues and Global Distribution of Goods. I also like to think of it as a class about globalization and the environment. There's so many aspects of the world today that are affected by increasing global trade, but also increasingly serious environmental issues, and there are important linkages between these two kind of very large sets of activities, and that's what we'll be exploring in the course together this semester. As you know, this is an upper division GE class, so you'll need to have completed all your core GE courses in order to take this class. And you'll also have needed to pass the WST and have upper division standing. You are fulfilling an Area R, Earth and Environment requirement by taking and completing this class successfully. And then your very best friend this semester will be the SJSU Desire to Learn class website, which you'll see at the bottom of the material right here, the top half of the page. So. And you'll see on page 2 the student learning objectives for this class, and there's 3 of them. The first is that you should be able to demonstrate an understanding of the method and limits of scientific investigation. So we'll be looking at the scientific method and how evidence from scientific investigations is used to answer questions about globalization and the environment. Secondly, it's important that you be able to distinguish science from pseudoscience. So we'll talk about kind of what science is and what it isn't, what non-science is, what pseudoscience is, and we'll be analyzing several articles written on environmental issues associated with globalization and how strong we think those articles are relative to the kind of merit of their scientific arguments. And then for learning objective 3, we'll be talking about applying a scientific approach to answer questions about Earth and the environment. So you'll be looking at a specific policy, such as life cycle assessment or extended producer responsibility, and gathering data and figuring out for yourself what the scientific data says about kind of how do we best understand this problem or how might we best solve it. For required text, readings, and films, I just wanted to show you, this is our first required text, Thomas Friedman's Hot, Flat, and Crowded. It's available at the bookstore and on Amazon. It's fairly reasonably priced, so I'm encouraging everybody to get a hard copy, just because I think it's really, really useful. I'll just pull up an example here. When you're using this as a textbook, I actually encourage you to write in the textbook and underline points that the author is making that you think are really relevant. It helps you think more about the issues, it helps you remember them more, and I think it's a good learning tool. For the Annie Leonard text, which is the second text I'm asking you to purchase, you can either purchase a hard copy or an electronic copy. Hard copies are available at the bookstore, and I do encourage you to purchase your copies through the bookstore if you can, even if it is a few dollars more to support the university and the services that it provides to everybody. Other readings are going to be on the class website, so you can just download those from the content section. And then if you move to page 3, you'll see that there's 2 films that you'll need to rent. You don't need to purchase them, as in buy them, but you will need to probably pay money at least to see The Island President, which you can see on iTunes. It's a really great movie. I think you'll learn a lot about climate negotiations and the impacts of climate change on small island nations. And I think the director did a really good job of portraying the situation of this particular country and what this particular president has done to help his country. And then also we'll be watching a film called Yes Men Fix the World, and there are 2 copies, I believe, available for checkout at the King Library, and they're also available for rental. So this brings us to classroom protocol. Just make sure that you do the readings for the class before you do the post. The readings are super interesting. I don't think it would be a problem to do the readings. If you find you have any questions, please email me through the course website, and we can discuss the readings in more detail. I'll also do my best to provide you with videos like this and presentation recordings to help you further understand key course concepts. And the assignments that we'll be working on will help, again, reinforce course concepts and encourage you to kind of apply your own rubric for understanding how to evaluate issues related to globalization and the environment. Regarding office visits, I really enjoy talking and meeting with students, so please feel free to email me or to request a Skype appointment. I'm happy to do that, and actually everybody will kind of have to meet with me eventually over the semester, talk about their term paper projects. I think it will be really good for us to meet even more than once a semester so that you can get the most you can out of the class. If you look at page 5 of the Greensheet, you'll see the main assignments for the course. So 33 points out of 100, which is a lot. A third of your course grade is based on discussion posts, and you'll hear more about that in just a couple of minutes. There'll be an essay on science and pseudoscience, which is 6% of your grade. A final paper on life cycle assessment and the materials economy, that's 20% of your grade. A midterm and a final, as well as film discussion papers. And if you have any questions about the assignments, feel free to contact me via the course website. Hello. Also on page 4, you will see how I use grading rubrics to grade written work. That means term papers and essays. So you'll see there's a certain set of things I'm looking for in terms of content, so the meat of what you're writing about, and also there are a number of things I'm looking for in terms of writing style. For example, how you're organizing the paper, what level of grammar you're using, do you have transitions between paragraphs and things like that. So please make sure you review the grading rubrics for the written work before you submit your first assignment. Okay, moving on to page 6, you'll see there are sections in the green sheet on dropping and adding the course. So please make sure that you are aware of those deadlines. The last day to drop is September 4th, so just please keep that in mind as you're planning your schedule for the semester. And also, please be aware of university policies on academic integrity. Because it is an online class, it's very difficult to proctor exams and things like that. So please make sure, extra sure, that you are not sharing test questions with other people or your responses to them. Just really helps everybody in the long run, and you'll learn a lot more from the class. And also know that there are stiff penalties for violating academic integrity policies. If you have a disability, please let me know, and I will do everything I can to make accommodations for you in this class. So please let me know about that. And if you go on to page 7, it's kind of an outline of the whole class. You can see we're here on week 1. And there's also information about the discussion posts. So discussion posts for that week, say for example for week 2, are due by 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, the Friday that they are assigned. Okay, so that would be for week 2, which begins on August 27th. Those posts would be due by August 31st. And we'll go over the rubric for the discussion posts in just a couple of minutes. So you can see, here we are at week 1, and your first assignment is to make a post of self-introduction, and you will find that assignment description on the class website. If you go up to the discussions tab and click on it, you'll see an assignment, kind of a forum topic called self-introductions, and if you can click on that and just follow the instructions, which are fairly straightforward, you will make your first class post, which I very much look forward to reading. And if you look at week 2, you can see that we're going to be covering kind of a basic introduction to globalization and factors that are driving globalization, and exploring kind of at a very large level the relationship between globalization and large-scale environmental issues. In week 3, we'll talk about this concept of sustainability, which is kind of the balancing of 3 very important factors: environmental protection and enhancement, economic development, and social equity. And that term is widely known as sustainability. And we'll also be talking about science and pseudoscience and how understanding the difference between these two can help you gain a better understanding of arguments about globalization and the environment as they apply to a particular topic, like deforestation or carbon sequestration, for example. Moving on to week 4, we're going to delve into kind of the state of the world from a biological perspective, but also from a human ecology perspective, to understand kind of what the state is of our kind of living ecosystems, and also a number of different types of vertebrate species, as well as understanding the role that human consumption patterns play on the world's biocapacity. So that's week 4. And in week 5, we'll take a closer look at human consumption. And I think you'll really enjoy the Friedman chapter there. Helps you take a step back from your kind of everyday consumer lifestyle and think about the influences that are conscious and unconscious that affect our buying behavior. In week 6, we'll talk about globalization, climate change, and social equity. And we'll be watching a really terrific film called The Island President, which focuses on the situation of the Maldives and the 2009 Copenhagen climate negotiations. It's a fascinating movie. It gives you a really in-depth view of what happened during those climate negotiations. I think you'll really, really enjoy it. And I'm looking forward to watching it again. In week 7, we'll talk about global institutions. And by institutions, I mean these large organizations like the World Trade Organization, the World Bank, other non-governmental organizations that all play a role in understanding globalization, trying to create policies that manage globalization, and trying to strike a balance between how do we keep the economy moving and raise standards of living for people in developing countries, but at the same time understand how natural ecosystem services provide a life support system here on Earth, and how we can work to protect those ecosystem services so that they keep on providing benefits to humans and to other species in perpetuity. And in week 8, we'll have kind of a take-home midterm to review the concepts that we've been talking about for the previous 7 weeks. After the midterm, we'll be going more in depth into looking at specific topics and life cycle assessment. So week 9 I've entitled, Where Does It All Go? We'll look at trade and transportation issues, and the EPA has put together a lot of really interesting statistics that help you get a very in-depth understanding of how globalized trade and specifically transportation and air pollution issues are related. So I think you'll really learn a lot from that. And also electronic waste. What do we do with all these cell phones and tablet computers and PCs when they've reached the end of their useful lifespan? We think we're recycling them responsibly, but what really happens to them, and how can we ensure that in the future we take care of our e-waste in a way that doesn't harm the environment or people that are working to kind of salvage usable materials from this e-waste. And then also we'll be looking at the ocean pollution gyres, which are kind of these big swirling areas of pollution in all 5 of our oceans that illustrate how kind of long it takes for plastics to degrade or not in the environment, and the impact that they are having on the ocean ecosystem. In week 10, we'll talk more about life cycle assessment, and we'll move into the Leonard reading, The Story of Stuff. And you'll also start working on your term paper. So this is where you get to pick from 3 topics and really show what you can do in terms of research and understanding these really, really difficult issues. As we move into the last third of the class, we'll be talking more about life cycle assessment. So how do we understand a product's or services impact on the environment, from raw material extraction to use to disposal, hopefully reuse? How does that whole process work, and how do we begin to understand the impacts of things like cars and computers, furniture, buildings, any kind of good or service that you can think of? And we'll have some interesting papers to read about that. One paper that I read in preparing for this class actually looks at the life cycle, I think, in the water footprint of M&Ms, for example, which shows that you can do a life cycle assessment for just about anything. And for the final weeks of class, we'll be looking at solutions to some of these what seem like intractable problems. How do we kind of figure out a way to develop a new system for renewable energy? How do we figure out a way to sequester carbon effectively to stop or ameliorate the very negative effects that we're seeing today of climate change? So I know that we will cover material in the class that at times appears very daunting and actually may be kind of depressing to read, but I have faith in kind of the human condition and our desire to do the right thing for people and for the environment. And I think that all of us have something that we can contribute to kind of address some of these very, very serious environmental issues, but at the same time maintaining momentum for kind of new economic growth and a new green economy. So it's actually a very, very exciting time to be talking about these issues, because so many things are happening, particularly in Silicon Valley, around clean energy solutions and sustainability. So So I'm really glad that you're taking this class, because it will really put you in a good position to demonstrate your knowledge of one of the most important set of factors affecting the world we live in today. It's globalizing economies and cultures and information technology and large-scale environmental impacts. So with that kind of brings us to the end of the class. We'll watch kind of a contrarian film called The Yes Men Save the World, and I hope you find it humorous. It's definitely a different point of view. They're kind of an anti-establishment, anti-globalization organization, and again, I'll talk more about the film and the Yes Men later, but I think it's good to get different perspectives on globalization and what people, individuals and groups and communities can do to kind of address some of the negative effects of globalization. And that brings us to kind of the end of the semester, the final exam, and the final paper. So now that's kind of completes our discussion of the green sheet. I'd like to move on to the second document right here, which is the online course discussion grading rubric. And I know some of you might be experts in taking online classes, but I've talked to several of you for whom this is a first, it's their first online class. So I wanted to make sure that everybody understands what is expected in the context of discussion posts. So as I mentioned before, instead of having discussions face-to-face in a classroom, we'll be having discussions online. And discussion postings kind of duplicate the classroom interaction, even though we can't be face-to-face. They give everybody a chance to participate. I think they also encourage more thoughtful responses, because someone will make a post and then you'll have some time to think about it. You could even go online and find an outside reference that either supports or refutes that person's point, and then you make your own point and move the class discussion forward. So I think it's a really great tool for helping better understand the readings, and for us as a class to kind of move forward to our own understanding about globalization and some of the important environmental issues globalization is impacting. Okay, so as I mentioned before, this is week 1, so you're required to make a post during week 1, only one post. In weeks 2 through 4, you have to make multiple posts. Okay, it's called a set of posts. And then for the rest of the class, you need to comment on 7 of the remaining 10 forums to get credit for the class. The posts for the week are worth 2 to 4 points. So you can see that they really add up. Pretty much, every set of discussion posts is worth about 3% of your course grade. So you really want to make sure that you do a good job doing the readings and writing a discussion post that is responsive to the readings, responsive to my comments if I comment on your post, and also responsive to other students. All right, so if you are new to taking an online class, please read the basic instructions that I've written kind of starting on the bottom of page 1 that tell you how to make a post. And there's also instructions on the class website, like your name and where you're from, what your major is, and what you hope to get out of this class, as well as, for fun, a little known fact about yourself. And on the middle of page 2, you'll see the grading, the grading rubric. Okay, so that's how your posts are graded. In general, for your posts, you should try to make several posts over the course of the week, and in the instructions for the discussions, it'll give you further details on how many posts you should be making. You want to make sure you visit the discussion boards several times a week so you can see what people are writing and you can respond to them. So don't make your posts on just one day. Actually, there's a point penalty for that, so that we're having more of a class dialogue and discussion throughout the week. So for your postings, you should mention at least 2 points from the week's readings. You should relate new content to what you've already learned in the course to date. And I encourage you to bring in information from outside sources as well. I really like it when you kind of relate a course topic, maybe on consumerism, to your own personal experience. I think other students enjoy reading that too, so there's a point for that. You don't want to just be regurgitating content, so really try to critically analyze what you're reading. Friedman brings up a lot of really good points, some of which you may agree with and some of which you may not agree with. And I'm really looking for discussion posts that critically analyze the content. So you might say, I agree with this part of what Friedman said, but not this part, and here's why. So that would be an example of kind of a critical analysis. Make sure that you proofread your posts before you finalize them so that the grammar is correct and the spelling is correct, as well as capitalization and other usage aspects. And then please be polite and follow proper etiquette for online conversations. So please don't call any other students names or insult their positions. You can disagree with them, but always be polite. And then there's also a number of points that you can get for responding to other students. Incorporate their quotes, have logical arguments, and also use correct grammar and spelling. Please note that I will not be grading the discussions as soon as they are due. For the week 2 postings, I will grade them as quickly as I can so you get an idea of what I'm looking for. And then after that, I will grade them as soon as possible after the submission deadline. Some things to think about as you're composing your postings. Prepare yourself, so make sure you do the readings. Read the discussion posting directions and prompt very carefully. Okay, so you know exactly how many posts you're supposed to make, what questions you're supposed to respond to. Okay, what's your main argument? No one likes to listen to kind of a rambling argument that's not really related to the question at hand. So really try to kind of put your main assertion as the first sentence or as the title of your post. If you have other references, you need to cite them so that other people can access them. I encourage you to write out your response before you actually post it, because composing online, I think, does not lend itself to thoughtful writing. So I think it's a very good idea to actually write your response in a word processing software at first and then post it to the discussion board. I think the quality of your postings will be much higher that way. And then also follow the rules. So make sure that you're reading all the instructions and following them to the best of your ability as you write your posts. Make them substantive. Okay, so that's what is meant by give meaning to your posts. Post on time. Actually, you'll be locked out if you don't post on time, and you won't be able to get credit for your post, no matter how brilliant it was. So please remember to post on time. And again, put a little bit of yourself in the posting to make the conversation more interesting for me and for your fellow students. So I think that if you kind of print this out and kind of keep it handy and review all the criteria for grading before you submit your post, that you'll do very well in the postings. The topic and the subjects we'll be investigating this semester are so interesting that I think we'll have many, many things to talk about. There'll be no shortage of things to discuss in our forums. And again, I really look forward to seeing your self-introduction posts, which are due this coming Sunday. Okay, and I also look forward to seeing your first set of posts on the Friedman readings, which is going to be for week 2. That's chapters 1 and 4 in Friedman and an overview of the Globalization 101 website. So that's all for now, and please check back in on Monday. I'll have another update for you as well. Thanks.